How the High Street has changed in the 40 years up to 2022. In 1982 I was very concerned about the number of old buildings disappearing in the town, so I photographed Orpington High Street to create a record. I have gone back at regular intervals ever since to photograph, and in 2022 video. So what has changed between 1982 and 2022? How many of these shops do you remember? In this video we look at the area around the old cinema, the Commodore, Blockbuster Video and McDonalds. Please subscribe to get updates as I release them. Brought to you by Eclectic Experience, change seen through images. The Commodore Cinema was a significant landmark and amenity in the High Street. It was opened in 1933 and did not close until 1982, shortly after this picture was taken. Videotapes were often blamed for the demise of old cinemas, so it's interesting that a video store, first Titles then Blockbuster, was for many years in this parade of shops, until it went into administration and the store closed in the early teens. The site was then occupied by Wicks in 2017, but by 2022 it was empty again. Before becoming a video store, the building was in 1982 a builder's merchant. Another DIY shop, Fads, was also in this parade of shops. It is interesting that both Oasis and eventually Fads disappeared from the High Street as out-of-town retail became more prevalent. Another change was the addition of an extra floor to the building Blockbuster was in, seen here from a couple of views in 1982 before the change. When Blockbuster first moved in, there were 2 stories above the shop, but by 2002 the building had been reclad and an extra story added. This can clearly be seen as we compare before and after shots. Another interesting point was when the previous village hall was demolished, it revealed the background to an old painted sign on the side of the building. This can be seen clearly here in 2022. Swinging down the High Street in 2022, we also see the next door building has seen some exterior change, but no extra floor. We see the building before the refit in 2012, where the main tenant is bathrooms. In the first photos, this was Fads, which disappeared somewhere between 2002 and 2007. And then in 2017, where Cycles UK has taken over and the full extent of the refit can be seen. Moving back to the Commodore in 1982, following its closure, the old cinema was bulldozed and the new building that we see today was built on the site. It has been occupied by McDonalds ever since it opened. The shop next to McDonalds in the same building has changed a few times, first being a newsagent. From these photos it looks like McDonald's only substantially changed its branding once between 2007 and 2012, moving from the old red and yellow to what we see today. The unit next to McDonald's has been cash converted for at least 10 years now. The final building in this section has seen the least change above the shops, though it has still been improved. The shops, however, have all changed, sometimes several times over in the 40 years. It is interesting that although the businesses change, the type of businesses often does not. In this line of 4, the end unit has always been a food outlet. In 1982 it was a Wimpy. It has also been the Last Stop, Mirage and is now Dallas. Similarly, the bookmakers have stayed in the same place, first as John Humphrey's and then from the 2007 picture, Coral. The other middle unit was an optician for most of the 40 years, but by 2022 had become Cake Box. The other unit, since the 2012 picture Thomas Brown Estate Agents, was, in 1992, Mr Frank's Carpet Shop, before becoming Fires and More. Above all these shops is now a gym. It looks like it became a gym by 2012, with a change in signage between 2017 and 2022. Looking at the rear of these buildings is quite revealing. This shot is from 2022 before going back to 1982. First we see the old storage areas of the builders merchant that were then cleared to make a car park for the video shops, first Titles, then Blockbuster. We can also see how the extra storey was added to the building in the 2007 and later pictures. By 2017 the current village hall can be seen on the left, with Wick's signage replacing Blockbuster. Moving along, this is the rear view of the cinema in 1982. It was a big building. I remember queuing round the back when the original Star Wars film came out. This is what replaced the cinema. This is the back of the McDonalds building and the 4 shops next to it in 1992. And then again in 2012. We can see it has hardly changed. And if we were to look in 2022, it would be pretty much the same view. Coming back to the shop side of the High Street, on the left, walking down the High Street from the War Memorial, the buildings above the shops have hardly changed in 40 years. Windows have been replaced and satellite dishes added, but otherwise, in complete contrast to the other side, it is still pretty much the same as in 1982. However, the shops and shop fronts have seen massive change. This was a video from 2022. We'll now look at zooming in from 1982 and see how things have changed. Looking at the first shops in this survey, Sketchley the dry cleaners, Low Waters the florist and Bruce's sports goods all have long gone. There is still a chemist, but the shop front is very different, with all the red having gone. In 2022, these shops are now McQueen, Oriental Turkish Supermarket, Dolce Italia and the pharmacy. The street also looks different. The central island with flowers has gone, and there are now trees on the widened pavement. Back in 1982, this was still a time when there were separate shops for butchers, fishmongers, and in this case Lorimer's the stationers. Zooming in, we can really see how the High Street has changed. The Nationwide Building Society has now moved further down the High Street, and many of the old shops have gone. It is worth noting the clock above the jewellers. Once a common sight on high streets, this one, like many others, disappears in later years. Other shops that have now gone include the double-fronted shop called Woodhouse, the K-Shoe shop, Zizzy, and then the unit before the end, Goodrich. Change was gradual, looking 10 years later in 1992. The sports shop had changed to Reflex, but was now empty. The fishmonger Jay's was still holding on. There's the new addition, the Xeon restaurant, that took over from the Tandoori, which is still there today, and Lorimer's has expanded. There's been a huge amount of change in the 10 years from 1982 to 1992. Of note that his Woodhouse has now been replaced by the Woolwich. We can also see, with an old logo, Andrew's Estate Agents, which is still there today. In 1997, as we move along, there is a mixture of change. The clock that was once above the jewellers has gone, and also a number of other shops have changed. We get a good view of the other end of the block. Robinson and Jackson Estate Agent occupy the last unit. We can also see Domino's Pizza and Andrew's Estate Agents, both of which are still there in 2022. 2 shops that have since gone are Threshers and Goodrich. By 2002, Cutting Remarks now sits next to the florist. Jay's the fishmonger has gone, but the pharmacist still looks unchanged. Lorimer's is the same. There are new shops, Stone Glaze and Age Concern, with the Woolwich and the estate agents at the far end of the parade also being unchanged. In 2007, we can still see the old street layout, with the island in the middle and hardly any trees for most of this section. By 2012, trees can be seen all the way down the road. Other changes include Age Concern now being called Age UK, tax assist accountants have arrived next to Harris Hospice Care. By 2017, this parade of shops is very close to what we see in 2022. The big change is that the trees have grown significantly, making the high street a lot greener. Between 1982 and 2022, every unit has changed its shop front, but there are a couple of businesses still occupying the same shops. This whole section of the High Street does demonstrate the structural changes seen in high streets across the country, with the disappearance of butchers and fishmongers, cinemas and video shops. However, in this part of the High Street, most have been replaced by new businesses, and Orpington also got a new cinema, which will be covered in a later video. There has been so much change. No shop front is the same as 40 years ago, and hardly any businesses are in the same unit. I've highlighted only some of the changes. I am sure you will see many more. If you've enjoyed this video, at the end there are links to another on the War Memorial area and a further one on the railway station. I'll be working my way through the High Street, aiming to make similar videos, so please subscribe to the channel, click the alerts bell and add any comments, especially with additional information. Thank you for watching Eclectic Experience, change seen through images.